It doesn't happen all at once. It's not dramatic. It doesn't throw you to the floor or grip your chest in front of the sink. It arrives slower than that, like the way a room grows warm without you noticing until you're sweating and unsure when it started. You think you're doing everything right. You've swapped fried for boiled, greasy for grilled, processed for whole. You've listened to the doctors, the magazines, the wellness shows with their perfect smiles. You've reached for what they told you was best, foods from the earth, roots full of fiber and color. You've believed in the promise that natural means healing, that vegetables can't betray you, but your pressure is rising, quietly, daily. You feel it before you see it. A faint pressure behind your eyes when you bend over, a pulse in your neck when you're lying still, a tiredness that wraps around your ribs. You tell yourself it's age, maybe the weather, maybe you slept wrong. But deep down, there's a whisper that something small, something routine is pushing you out of balance, and it's coming from your plate. You don't want to believe it. How could something as humble as a carrot or a beet be to blame? How could the same potato that fed your family now turn on your heart? You're not failing. Your body is changing. And the foods that once fueled you may now be too fast for your blood, too sharp for your vessels, too dense for your rhythm. This isn't about restriction. It's about recognition. Because sometimes the very thing that feels safe is the thing your body can no longer process the way it used to. And once you know that, you can begin. Not with fear, but with clarity. You've heard it for years. Eat from the earth. And you have. Root vegetables felt honest. They weren't boxed, bagged, or drowned in chemicals. They came from soil, carried history, felt grounding in your hands. A baked potato beside steamed greens, a cup of beet soup on a cool evening, roasted carrots caramelized just enough to feel indulgent, but still good for you. These were your safe foods, your better choices. But roots are dense for a reason. They were made to survive, to store energy underground, to feed what's next. And inside that strength is something you might not see with your eyes, but your body feels it. Starches, sugars, compounds that behave differently in a younger body than they do in yours now. Because here's the part no one tells you when they hand you that clean eating list. Digestion slows, insulin response dulls, blood vessels stiffen, and those earthy foods you once processed with ease now send your pressure ticking upward, not in a dramatic spike, but in a persistent hum. It's not about demonizing the vegetable, it's about understanding what it becomes in your body in this stage of life. Not everything natural is neutral. Not everything whole is harmless. You've trusted food to be your ally, and it still can be. But only when it works with your body's current truth, not the truth of a body from 20 years ago. The problem isn't just in the food, it's in the belief that all healthy foods are healthy for all people, all the time. And when your body starts whispering through fatigue, headaches, dizziness, pressure, you have to stop and ask, what is it trying to process that it simply can't anymore? That's not failure. That's wisdom waking up. And it's asking you to listen now before the damage hardens into something harder to reverse. It doesn't knock. It doesn't scream. It doesn't even announce itself when you're sitting quietly, sipping tea, watching the news. But it's there. Rising, subtle, constant, like a tide you didn't know was coming in. High blood pressure doesn't always feel like an emergency. Sometimes it just feels like a little tension in the jaw, a little heaviness behind the eyes, a flush in the cheeks that fades before you notice it's a pattern. And every time you reach for that familiar root vegetable, the one that's supposed to help, not harm, it climbs just a little more. Because inside those roots, there's energy. Not the quick burst of candy or soda, but a slower, deeper form. Complex carbohydrates that break down into glucose, feeding your bloodstream in waves. That would be fine if your blood vessels still had the same stretch they used to, but now they're less forgiving. Your arteries aren't playgrounds anymore. They're tighter, less elastic, more reactive. And when the sugar rises, even from something as earthy as a sweet potato or a roasted parsnip, your heart has to push harder. Your pressure goes up, not all at once, but with every repetition, every meal that feels safe. You might not feel it until the numbers show up on the cuff, or until your doctor gives you that look, or until a small headache turns into a week of fog. But by then, it's already been climbing, slowly, quietly. It's not the kind of spike that wakes you in the middle of the night. It's the kind that wears your system down over months, years. And the scariest part? You never saw it coming because you were doing what you thought was right. Because no one told you that even healthy starch in the wrong season of life can become a weight your heart can't carry. Not all sugar comes in shiny wrappers or sweet drinks. Some of it hides behind the earthy scent of vegetables that look like they came straight from nature's heart. It hides in the golden flesh of a roasted carrot, in the smooth texture of a mashed beet, in the quiet sweetness of a baked sweet potato. You don't see it as sugar, you see it as nourishment, but your blood doesn't make that distinction. It reacts the same way, rising, adapting, straining. Because once inside you, the body doesn't care if it came from candy or a carrot. It breaks it down the same. Glucose, fructose, a surge that once kept your energy steady, but now lingers too long, demanding too much. And the trap is subtle. You think you're eating well. You think you've made the right switch. You've said goodbye to white rice, to bread, to desserts. But what you didn't realize is that those root vegetables, those colorful, comforting foods, can still tip your insulin. They still whisper to your pancreas, still raise your glycemic load, and for a system already struggling to regulate pressure and sugar, that whisper becomes a shout. You feel it in the afternoon slump that doesn't go away, in the way your legs feel heavier than they should, in the odd tension across your shoulders. These aren't random signs, they're warnings, your body trying to metabolize something it's no longer designed to handle in quantity. And it's not just about blood sugar, it's about what that sugar does when it pools, how it hardens arteries, thickens blood, presses against the walls that carry life through you. You're not overeating, you're not being careless, you're simply stuck in a trap no one warned you about, a trap that looks healthy, feels nourishing, but keeps raising the pressure one bite at a time. They were always there for you, in every decade, every season, mashed beside turkey on holidays, crisped in oil on Sunday mornings, tucked into stews when money was tight. Potatoes were comfort, potatoes were home. They weren't indulgent or extravagant, they were simple, honest, the kind of food you didn't have to question. And for a long time they served you well. But the body you walk in today is not the body that ran through those younger years. The chemistry has changed, the pressure has shifted, and that potato, innocent as it looks, carries more than you remember. Because beneath its skin is a dense, fast-absorbing starch, one that breaks down into glucose at a pace your system may no longer handle. A baked potato has a glycemic impact not so far from a soda. And when your vessels are less elastic, when your kidneys are filtering slower, when your insulin doesn't rise on command the way it used to, that simple potato becomes a silent accelerant. A normal dinner becomes a spike in pressure. A memory becomes a warning. It's not about guilt. You didn't do anything wrong. You were trusting what you knew. But now, you have to trust what your body is telling you. If your ankles swell a little more after dinner, if your pressure creeps up the morning after a heavy meal, if you feel flushed, heavy, a little off, you may be seeing the aftermath of something your body once handled with ease, but now finds overwhelming. Potatoes aren't poison, but they're not harmless either. Not for everyone, not anymore. And recognizing that doesn't take away their place in your story. It simply means you're writing a new chapter now, one where what you eat matches who you are, not who you used to be. They tell you beets are good for the heart, that they lower blood pressure, open your vessels, clean your system like a gentle tide washing the shore, and for some people in some bodies they do. But that isn't the whole truth. Not when your metabolism has slowed, not when your insulin response is dulled, not when your kidneys are holding more than they used to. Because beets don't just bring nitrates and color, they bring sugar too, a lot of it, and your body knows. It doesn't matter that it's natural. Once the sweetness hits your bloodstream, the process begins. Glucose rises, insulin follows, if it can. Your blood vessels are already doing extra work just to keep up. The illusion is in how good they look, how fresh they taste, how clean they feel. But beets don't bypass your digestion. They don't float past your pancreas unnoticed. They demand to be processed. And in a body that's already trying to manage pressure, weight, and sugar, that demand can become a burden. Maybe you noticed it in a wave of warmth after dinner, or a pulsing behind the eyes. Maybe your blood pressure monitor showed a strange spike even though you ate light. It's confusing, because beets don't come in wrappers. They grow in soil. They feel safe. But just because something looks healing doesn't mean it is. At least not for you, not right now. And that's the hardest part of getting older, unlearning the foods that once served you, letting go of the labels, listening not to the marketing or the trends, but to your own body. You're not imagining things. The rise is real. The fatigue is real. And when you trace it back, not to salt, not to stress, but to something as innocent as a beet, it can feel like betrayal. But it's not betrayal, it's biology, and it's asking you to adjust before illusion becomes injury. It's one of the first vegetables you ever trusted. Easy on the eyes, easy on the stomach, sweet but not indulgent. Crunchy, colorful, harmless. You dipped them in hummus, sliced them into salads, boiled them into broths. You believed in them, still do, and why wouldn't you? They're everywhere in health advice, low in calories, high in fiber, rich in beta-carotene. But no one ever told you what happens when those soft orange spears meet a system that's no longer quick to respond. No one told you that even something this gentle can send your insulin into a silent spin. Because carrots, when eaten raw, feel innocent. But cook them, roast them, steam them, soften them, and the sugars concentrate. That subtle sweetness becomes more accessible, easier to absorb, and your body, trying to stay steady, has to react. The insulin has to rise, the glucose has to be dealt with, and if your cells are already sluggish in accepting the sugar, it lingers longer than it should. That's when you feel it, not in your mouth but in your chest. A strange tension, a rise, not a surge but a slow swell that catches up with you later. You thought you were being careful. You gave up cakes, pastries, soda, you leaned into vegetables. But no one explained that even vegetables can dance with insulin in ways that throw off your balance. You're not failing, you're learning. And part of that learning is recognizing that sweetness doesn't always come in obvious forms. Sometimes it hides in the warm glow of something that once felt safe. The dance is still happening between sugar, pressure, and age. But you don't have to sit helpless while your body leads. You can step in, guide it, shift the rhythm. Start choosing foods not for what they meant in the past, but for how they move inside you now. They look like pale carrots, innocent and overlooked. Not flashy, not trendy, just another root in the winter basket, often roasted beside meats or pureed into soups you grew up calling comfort. Parsnips feel old-fashioned, dependable. You never imagined they'd have anything to do with your rising pressure, but they do. Because buried beneath their nutty flavor and creamy texture is a starch load that hits harder than you'd expect. Not right away, but in a wave your system has to swim against long after the meal is over. Parsnips carry a glycemic load that rivals white bread. Cooked, they break down fast. The sugars rush in, and your body, still recovering from breakfast or trying to steady itself from yesterday, must rise again to manage the new demand. And if it doesn't, if your vessels are already tense, your heart already compensating, your kidneys already working overtime, that surge can tilt everything further out of balance. It doesn't take much, just enough to curve the pressure up another notch, just enough to make that dizziness last a little longer when you stand, that breath feel a little tighter before bed. You don't feel sick. That's what makes it so hard to see. You feel tired, heavy, a little off. And it's easy to blame age or weather or stress. But the truth may be rooted in that simple vegetable, baked in olive oil, seasoned with care. Food you believed in, food you thought was helping. And it's not about cutting everything out. It's about cutting through the illusion. The curve is real, the climb is slow, but every small choice pushes the slope one way or the other. And when you begin to notice how even one food can change your inner tide, you begin to reclaim control, not just of what's on your plate, but of what's happening inside your veins. It's the darling of the health world, the better potato, the one they tell you is good for diabetics, good for the heart, rich in fiber and vitamins, low on guilt. You see it swapped in menus, spotlighted in cookbooks, praised by nutritionists who mean well. And so you trust it, you reach for it, you bake it, mash it, blend it into soups, you feel proud of the choice, but then the headache comes, the pressure nudges upward, the sleep is restless, and something doesn't feel right, again and again, until finally you look down at that soft orange flesh and begin to question, could it be this? Sweet potatoes carry a sweetness that doesn't hide. It's there on the tongue, even before the body begins to process it. And though it's natural, though it comes packaged in fiber and skin, it still becomes sugar, glucose in the bloodstream. And your system, slower now, more reactive, more fragile, has to respond. The pancreas works harder, the vessels stretch tighter, the pressure builds. And because you've been told it's the healthy option, you never suspect it. That's what makes it dangerous, not because it's poisonous, but because it's praised, and you're caught in the middle, between what you're told and what your body knows, between the reassurance of labels and the discomfort of symptoms. You start doubting yourself, wondering if it's something else. But no. Sometimes the truth wears a friendly face. Sometimes the masked culprit is the one that promised you balance. It's not about shame, it's not about blame, it's about noticing, adjusting, respecting the fact that a food can be healthy in general, but not healthy for you, not now, not with your current rhythm. Your body isn't betraying you, it's protecting you. It's just waiting for you to finally trust what it's been trying to say all along. There was a time when you could eat a plate full of food and forget about it, when a second helping didn't mean anything more than a satisfied sigh, when sugar burned off with a walk to the mailbox or a busy day in the garden. Your metabolism worked like clockwork then, fast, efficient, invisible. You didn't think about it because you didn't have to, but time changes everything. Not just the color of your hair or the creak in your knees, but the way your body uses what you give it. And slowly, without warning, the engine cools. Now, the same plate that once gave you energy leaves you sluggish. The same snack that once passed through unnoticed sits heavier. Your digestion is slower, your cells are slower to absorb, your insulin is slower to rise, and your blood is slower to clear what used to be harmless. And so, what was once fuel now becomes friction. Pressure builds, sugar lingers, and your heart pays the price. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your biology has moved into a new chapter. It's hard to accept that. Hard to believe your body could change so much without your permission. You still feel like you inside, but the machine isn't running the same. It's more sensitive now, more reactive, less forgiving. But that doesn't mean you're broken. It just means you need a different rhythm. When the metabolism slows, the solution isn't to panic. It's to pivot. It's to ask, what does my body need now, not what did it tolerate back then? The answer is quieter, simpler, but it's there. And when you honor it, when you begin to feed your body the way it functions today, the fog lifts, the pressure steadies, and what felt like decline starts to feel more like discovery. The word is everywhere, on boxes, in commercials, whispered through magazines and screens like a promise you want to believe. Healthy. It sounds clean, safe, trustworthy, and yet it's become one of the most confusing words in your world, because what's labeled healthy isn't always what's right for you. Not anymore. And the more you follow those labels, the more you feel like you're doing the right thing while your numbers tell you otherwise. You walk down the produce aisle, fill your basket with roots and greens, bypass the snack aisles like a discipline you've earned. You say no to fried foods, no to sugar, yes to what the world says is wise. But your pressure is still climbing. Your energy is still low. You're still waking with that subtle throb at your temples. And the hardest part, you begin to doubt yourself. Maybe you're just unlucky. Maybe it's genetics. Maybe you're too old for this to change. But deep down, you know, something in the routine is working against you. The truth is, healthy is a general term. It doesn't account for your history, your medications, your unique physiology. It doesn't factor in age, inflammation, or how your blood vessels behave under pressure. What's good for one person can be harmful to another. And when a food is labeled healthy, you lower your guard. You stop questioning. You let it in without pause. That's the trap, not the food itself. but the blind trust. Your body is wiser than any marketing slogan. It responds quietly but consistently to what's working and what's not. And when something labeled healthy sends your system into alarm, believe that. Listen to that. Because in the end, no label is more reliable than the language of your own body. It's speaking. Now it's your turn to respond. You've never called it a journal, you've called it memory, habit, intuition. You've eaten the same things in the same ways for years, and your body knew how to handle it. But something's different now. Subtle signs that used to be easy to ignore are louder. A wave of fatigue after breakfast. A tightness in your chest that shows up an hour after lunch. A strange sense that what you're eating isn't giving back anymore. And still, you trust the routine, you trust the plate. Until one day, your numbers don't lie and you realize the routine needs rethinking. A food journal doesn't have to be clinical. It's not about shame. It's not about counting every bite. It's about observation. It's about curiosity. You write down what you eat, not just for record keeping, but to uncover patterns. You track how you feel, not just in the moment, but 2 hours later when the body has had time to respond. Was your heart racing? Were you dizzy? Did your blood pressure cuff surprise you again? You start to see what your body has been trying to tell you when it's under stress, when it's overwhelmed, when something once healthy is now disruptive. You don't need perfect data, you just need awareness. You don't need a notebook full of numbers, you need a story. And the story begins with you asking gently, honestly, what happens when I eat this? What changes after? What improves when I leave something out? In just 1 week, you start noticing. In 2, you start trusting. Not the labels, not the guidelines, but your own lived experience. Your body becomes the authority. And from that awareness, everything begins to shift, not by force, but by understanding, not by fear, but by respect. This journal, this quiet record, becomes the bridge between confusion and clarity. It shows you what your body already knows, what it's been whispering through symptoms and signs. And once you see the truth in writing, black and white, meal by meal, you'll never look at your plate the same way again. You've given up enough. Over the years, you've said goodbye to foods that brought comfort, flavors tied to memory. You don't need another list of no. What you need is a way forward, a map of yes, grounded in what your body can handle now. Root vegetables don't have to disappear entirely, but they need to make room for options that steady you, not spike you. It begins with texture, with fiber, with slower digesting plants that keep your blood sugar calm and your blood pressure even. Think cruciferous, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts. They're not just filler, they're metabolic allies. They digest slower, create less glucose demand, and bring compounds that help your vessels relax. Think leafy, spinach, kale, arugula, not because they're trendy, but because they're gentle. They bring magnesium, potassium, and antioxidants your heart craves. Think bitter, cabbage, endive, dandelion greens. They wake up digestion without overwhelming it. And when you crave something warm, hearty, grounding, try legumes, lentils, chickpeas, black beans. They offer bulk without the blood sugar cliff. Pair them with olive oil, with herbs, with lemon. Suddenly the plate feels full again, not just nutritionally, but emotionally. This isn't about restriction, it's about redirection, about shifting your meals from reaction to regulation, about creating food that fuels without pushing. It may feel unfamiliar at first. You may miss the sweetness of a roasted yam, the softness of mashed potatoes, but soon your body will speak back. Steadier energy, clearer mornings, gentler sleep. You'll know you're on the right path, not because someone told you, but because you feel it. You carry less fog, less bloat, less pressure. You're not being punished, you're being guided. Your body isn't fragile, it's precise. And once you begin feeding it based on what it needs today, not what comforted you yesterday, you'll see there's still joy in food, still warmth, still flavor. Only now it's working with you, not against you. You don't need a stethoscope to hear it. You don't need a doctor's office or a cuff or a chart. Your body speaks long before the numbers show up. It speaks in tension, in breath, in the way your heart feels when you climb the stairs, in the way your hands tremble just slightly when the sugar shifts too fast, in the way you wake up, not rested but startled. These aren't random signs, they're signals. A language your body has always spoken, but one you were never taught to translate. We're taught to dismiss these things, to power through, to call them aging or stress or just a bad day. But what if they were messages? What if they were early warnings that your inner systems were working too hard to keep up with something as simple as breakfast? That a handful of root vegetables caused your body to clench instead of release? Your pulse is talking, not just through your wrist, but through every sensation you've brushed off as coincidence. Listen, when your body feels heavy after eating, that's not normal. When your eyes blur mid-afternoon, that's not random. When your mood swings or your joints throb or your balance shifts slightly after dinner, that's the pulse speaking. That's your nervous system reporting back on what it just had to digest. And if the signals keep repeating, they're not accidents, they're patterns. The beauty is, you still have time. You're not too late. The body is adaptive, remarkably so. It can rebound, stabilize, even repair when you begin to listen, truly listen. That means slowing down. That means asking, how do I feel after I eat this? Instead of, is this food labeled healthy? The truth is, your pulse has always known. It's been your compass. And now, all it wants is for you to finally follow it home. You can start today, not with a purge, not with fear, but with presence, with a quiet decision to shift, not everything, just enough. You don't need to overhaul your life. You need to change the recipe, one root at a time, one plate at a time. Because every time you choose foods that work with your body's new rhythm, you soften the pressure, you lift the fog, you return to balance, you take back something that never should have slipped away, your power. This isn't about being perfect. It's not about following a strict diet or counting every gram. It's about being honest with yourself, about choosing foods that love you back, about remembering that your health isn't in someone else's hands, not the doctor's, not the company that packaged your meal, not the label with the false promise. It's in yours, in the small repeated decisions you make when no one's watching. And those decisions don't just impact your blood pressure, they impact your mood, your clarity, your confidence, your ability to keep showing up for the people and moments that matter. Imagine a day where your heart isn't racing, where your head isn't heavy, where you can walk longer, rest deeper, think clearer. That day doesn't come from medication alone, it comes from the food on your plate, and it's not as far away as it seems. Rewrite the recipe, roast different vegetables, try something new. Watch your numbers, not just on the monitor, but in your energy, your sleep, your steadiness. And if something you've eaten for years no longer serves you, it's not betrayal to let it go. It's wisdom. It's evolution. It's the body asking to be honored as it is now, not as it was, not as someone else says it should be. This is your kitchen, your table, your life. And your next chapter can begin with something as simple and as sacred as what you choose to eat.